everybody, and welcome to the Higher Perspectives Talks. Today we are talking with Stephen Denman, and we are talking about deep underground military bases. So welcome, Stephen.
Hi there, Zach. Hi.
Hey, and tell us a little bit about what a deep underground military base is.
Okay, well, a deep underground military base is, well, it's obviously a military facility that's being built below ground level. Most deep underground military bases globally are built around 2.5 miles to about 4.0 kilometers below ground level. And they usually have many levels, usually between 4 to 8 levels. The first level would start at, again, 2.5 miles to 4.0 kilometers below the ground. They will be interlinked at the very lowest level, so level 4 or level 8, with access tunnels. These would be both rail and road tunnels. So you'd have obviously enough room to transportation of military vehicles, lorries and so forth.
Just say primarily these are used to protect military compounds or protect, officially to protect the military weaponry, vehicles, things like this.
That's true, but to some extent, but it's also, there's a lot of advanced based sort of technology that's going on down there. Very advanced, a lot of it that is then slowly integrated back into the surface world through the corporations over a sort of 15-20 year period. There's obviously the reversed engineered technologies from various crashed UFO spacecraft that are then taken into these deep underground military bases. And obviously each of them is interconnected by these rail and road tunnel networks. And these are vast. Some of these are huge, these access tunnels, and they span thousands of kilometers around the planet. And obviously from all the research that's available, we know that there's these magnetic levitation trains that operate in the between.
Okay, let's slow. That's very good. Let's slow down with that. Let's just go on to the sense of UFO technology within these bases. So let's just start telling people, why do you think these UFO technology needs to go underground? Why is that? Why can't it be publicly shown? Let's explain that.
With the UFO reverse engineered technology, it's coming from other parts of this galaxy. It could be coming from literally parallel dimensions or parallel realities, parallel universes. And literally the technology is what can be defined as occult technology. It's so far beyond what we humans are used to in terms of our holographic consciousness, what we see and perceive around us in this 3D holographic reality, the world that's being created through film and television, the products you buy in supermarkets, all the things like the white goods, different televisions, and high definition sound systems, or anything from a fridge to a dishwasher. We're used to certain kinds of technology. We still have petrochemical, combustion engines in road vehicles. This is prehistoric.
Same engine for the last 100 years, isn't it? In a car, it's not changed.
Yeah, and so the reverse engineered UFO spacecraft, the rollout of the occult technologies that have come from the various circuitry, navigation systems, the types of different unusual metals that are used in the hull of such craft. It's so far beyond people's concepts that they've got to put out predictive programming and culture creation through science fiction, in film and television, to get people used to that technology, to get familiarized. That's
brilliant. So when did these kind of deep underground military bases, when did they start getting built?
Well, the very first deep underground military base that's on record, the very first one, was built, I think it was around 1948, I believe, and that began in, I think it was September, October 1948, and was completed. Although I'll have to say to start with, this was a human type deep underground military base.
Yeah.
To begin with, and it wasn't that far underground, and that base was initially constructed in Dulce. It was a US Army installation. It wasn't. It would be partly called a deep underground military base, but it wasn't that far underground. This was only built at a depth maybe 250 to 300 feet below ground level, and that was utilizing already existing prehistoric geological openings, cavernous openings, natural passageways in those subterranean locations.
Yeah.
But the first official deep underground military base, again, was a US Army installation that was further expanded on in Dulce, in around the area in New Mexico, was in 1954. And I believe that was around October and November of 1954 that was commenced. It was built very quickly.
So in that note, so what started that? Why? Well, I know. Obviously, we had 1947 was the Roswell, 1947. So there was definitely something retrieved at that time, and obviously made to look like a stupid event that didn't happen. But there was definitely something that was retrieved. So was that where it started? Do you think? Or is that kind of?
No, it goes back. It doesn't go back to July 1947. It goes back actually earlier in 1954 to the 20th of February 1954 to be exact, in what is known as the Greada Treaty, which the 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason and US President David Dwight Eisenhower signed. He was officially supposed to be on holiday in Palm Springs playing golf in Kern County, Southern California, but was actually covertly transported on the 20th of February 1954 to Muroc Air Force Base, which then became Edwards Air Force Base, again in Kern County, Southern California. And a meeting was held with a group of beings, one of whom appeared from a large metallic silvery colored disc that came out of the sky and landed on the Muroc Air Force Base runway. Apparently there was well over 4,500 cameras running at the time in bright sunlight recording the landing of this UFO spacecraft. And a being that was around 7'6" tall, called a Rigelian Grey, with an ashen complexion, stepped off this UFO spacecraft. And, there was a meeting that lasted approximately 30 minutes in full view of many witnesses, many high-level individuals from the US federal government were there, and many other notable individuals as well that were connected to the US federal government. And they then signed the Greada Treaty. And out of the Greada Treaty, the agreement was in exchange for certain American citizens being abducted for their blood and various tissues as samples that were going to be used for genetic experiments, and obviously their DNA. Certain amounts of reversed occult technology would be given to the US federal government, which they could then integrate covertly within the military-industrial complex.
So what was the agenda? What was the agenda behind these beings that interacted with signed this treaty, wanted this treaty signed? What was their agenda? Because this is, just so we're not going down, because this is a massive subject, just making sure that we're always coming back to the deep underground military bases. So in the sense, and we will be going into all these avenues at some stage, but these deep underground military bases, so this technology was being used by governments to obviously give them power and this high-end technology, and allowed them to have more control. And that's the gist of it, you'd say?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, from the perspective of the Rigelian Greys, the real objectives of what they were planning to do, I'll come on into a minute. What I want to just mention is the construction, as I said, in October, November 1954 through until I think it was February, March 1956 at least, of the US Army installation and deep underground military base, which was located in and around the kind of Dulce area in New Mexico. And that base was constructed using techniques in collaboration with the Rigelian Greys. That base was a joint human-alien deep underground base.
Which is a very well-known base, the Dulce base as well.
The Dulce base, yeah.
Straight, yeah, lots of strange stories around that.
And it's actually on what's called the Jicarilla Apache Indian Reservation in that part of New Mexico.
Wow.
So there's been a lot of issues there where a lot of the Jicarilla Apache Indians have cited on many hundreds of occasions in the past 30 to 40 years very bizarre late night UFO activity in and around that US Army installation. And obviously, therefore, the deep underground military base, that's around 2.5 miles to about 4.0, therefore, kilometers below ground. So that's why that base was built. And it's no coincidence. That was literally a few months, the construction, later after that Greada Treaty was signed on the 20th of February, 1954, between US President David Dwight Eisenhower and the Rigelian Greys, Edwards Air Force Base, or Muroc Air Force Base, that became Edwards Air Force Base. It was from that point on that all the problems began. Then the real agenda of the Rigelian Greys was never actually truly revealed to the US federal government. And what really...
It's almost like the government went secret, or the government went covert as well.
Yeah.
With all this. So, there was a kind of a split in the governments, right?
Well, if you're taking a look at it, higher degree Scottish Rite Freemasonry, you're looking at the secret societies networks. Globally, there was more than one agenda at work, but the main cause of the problem was these beings, these malevolent extraterrestrial biological entities, or EBEs, the Rigelian Greys, the Tall Greys, were not honest about anything that they were doing. Their actual true and hidden, shall we say, intended goal and objective was to create genetic hybrids by using human blood and tissue samples and DNA. Now, millions upon millions of American citizens have been abducted, literally since late 1954 onwards. These abductions, these abductions then kind of tailed right off about 2007, 2008. Why that is probably a discussion for another video, because it's complex. But they basically lost the ability en masse to keep abducting American citizens and to some extent Canadian citizens, but mainly in the United States of America. So, yeah.
So the cattle mutation is a big one, a part of that as well, isn't it?
That's right.
I mean, there's Stephen Greer that says that is actually a psyop, that is the US government. But from what I see and what I've heard about cattle mutation it's absolutely, the technology is used and is unbelievable. It is just not physically possible.
I can tell you what the real reason is. What happens is the Zeta Reticulum type A Greys and the Zeta Reticulum type B Greys, they're genetic drones. They were created as basically genetic autonomic servants of the Tall Greys, the Rigelian Greys, the Greadans. And they're the ones that they send out, or had been for many decades, from that time, the end of 1954 on up until 2007, maybe 2008, doing all these extractions from cattle and so forth. And the reason behind all of that was because, again, they're looking to create hybrids, and that we don't know the real reasons why they're obsessed with creating so many different hybrids and genetic variations. But the whole MyLabs aspect, where people like Dr. Stephen Greer have said, "Oh no, the MyLabs is all done by humans. It's the military-industrial complex carrying out." No, what they did, they want people to believe that by actually trying to duplicate the real abductions going on, because then it creates a huge diversion and the smoke screen. Again, it's what's called literally apparent disinformation. So no. There is the real phenomena, but that has largely disappeared on this planet. The alien abduction phenomena was something that was really, really big, and it's not really the case now. Yes, you do have many more benevolent contactees with various extraterrestrials and ultra-terrestrials, but the situation with the Rigelian Greys and the Zeta Reticulum type A Greys, the Zeta Reticulum type B Greys is largely faded away. What we're left with is the AI computer systems in the deep underground military bases, and the first one that was developed was in the actual deep underground military base in Dulce in New Mexico. So
right, okay, so so we're connecting it all to the AI side of things as well. But I think a really interesting man was Philip Schneider, which you brought into my life a long time ago and told me about, and we had many discussions, and I remember watching his lectures on the early days of the internet, which kind of appeared and reappeared, got taken down a lot. But yeah, tell us about Philip Schneider, because he was a geologist, he was part of the US
engineering consultant, and he was a research geologist, but also he became a senior geologist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some very interesting stories around what he did, because he would actually go to government areas and locate the places to actually put these bases, right? Was that correct?
That's kind of what, yeah, I mean, it's not officially accepted, but it's believed when he was working for the US Energy Department, he was employed there as a research geologist. Again, this is all unofficially, kind of accepted knowledge. And that was part of what he did. He would go around designating suitable areas for shape charge blasting
Yeah.
to then look at constructing deep underground military bases for basically nuclear material storage, and other such things, and also the storage and development of advanced technologies. So, yes.
So the his motivation, wasn't it? What really got him on this path, because he went through a period where he was actually physically being chased and they were after him, and he was going and running around America doing these lectures. But what was his motivation? It was something connected to his friend, his colleague, died, I believe, right?
Yeah, one of his friends had apparently been, well, we don't know the actual official story behind, but he basically he died. The official reasons for that have never been verified, and they were very close. And Philip Schneider thought it was very suspicious, and he decided that something was adrift. He felt that the whole procedure, the coroner's report wasn't correct. The actual the local legal investigation into what happened to his friend didn't make any sense. So it was something that created a kind of psychological shift in his thinking, but it was also many of the things that he'd encountered. You've got to
Let's
remember.
talk about that. Let's talk about what he had, because particularly, which people might have heard of, is the Dulce Wars, and he was a big part of that, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, there's a bit of a misunderstanding concerning the whole issue with the Dulce conflict or the Dulce Wars. Philip Schneider wasn't directly involved actually in any Dulce conflict. There was issues. You must have heard of Thomas Alvin Costello, who was the security guard who worked actually in the deep underground military base in Dulce in New Mexico. And there, he actually gave accounts where there was a major fracas between the humans there, both scientific and military based, who basically ended up in a skirmish against the Rigelian Greys in that deep
and do you
underground
know
base.
particularly what that actual war or what that skirmish was? What was going on there?
Because there were many of the abductees. They found many body parts there, and so forth. And there was large metallic canisters full of enzymes and genetic material. I think it was in the very base level. I think it was level 7 of that deep underground military base. And this is well-known information. It's all over the internet, that information. So
now, I there's a particular story with Philip Schneider always stood out for me, and that was where he was sent to do an operation. And I think that's where something really changed. Obviously, he hadn't encountered these beings before, but he actually uncovered something within in the ground under the rocks, and when actually removing it, actually encountered a group of extraterrestrial beings that were quite aggressive.
Philip Schneider, he was the research geologist working, I think, for the US Energy Department at the time, was working with various other individuals from the US Energy Department, and they were actually looking at building a major access tunnel or passageway northward directly in to the deep underground military base in Dulce, New Mexico. Now, if we go, so basically this is how it all started. As you said, he was looking for a suitable area geographically where they could actually put an access point to then build this passageway northward to interlink it. Now, this was connected to the Los Alamos National Laboratory, which is owned and managed by the US Energy Department. Now, whilst he was a research geologist, Philip Schneider and his team from within the US Energy Department, they drilled 4 distinct equilateral distant holes in what was called the Chihuahuan Desert, if that's how it's pronounced. And this is amidst the lower Pecos Valley in north central New Mexico. And these access passageways were then designed to go north directly into that deep underground military base in Dulce to create an expansion between, so linked directly with the Los Alamos National Laboratory, the US Energy Department, directly into that US Army installation. Now, the situation, therefore, was on the day this happened was in, I think it was August 19, I think it was around sometime in August 1979. And he was analysing rock samples, and then they were discussing shape charge explosives from what I remember. And some of the structural geologists and the research geophysicists that with him, also from the US Energy Department, used specific types of shape charge blasting techniques, and they opened up a very large access hole in that area of the Chihuahuan Desert. Again, if that's how it's pronounced.
Sounds good.
So they basically had enough room. They had huge climbing ropes that were then sent straight down into this huge blown out access hole they created in this arid region. Remember, just visualizing this was southward of the deep underground military base, and in Dulce, New Mexico. Now, when they got to the floor area, Philip Schneider, alongside various special forces soldiers from the US Army Delta Force, that is also likewise called the Combat Applications Group, then suddenly encountered, I think it was a group of at least 7 or 8 of these extremely nasty looking Rigelian greys. These are 7'6" tall, and these Rigelian greys immediately became very hostile towards them. And from the information that Philip Schneider gave in some of his lectures, he actually used his own Walther PPK, which is a small handgun, and alongside at least 30 other individuals, both employed with the US Energy Department and employed in the US Army, there was a huge firefight that ensued. And it was during that time that one of the Rigelian greys or tall greys displayed some kind of metallic square device on its chest and spiraled its hand across it
Wow.
it was a clockwise spiral motion, and this huge beam of concentrated blue light burst out from it, and that's when it hit Philip Schneider.
Wow. Okay.
And the rest, obviously, we know about, really. If that is correct information, of course, and it's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting story, and anybody watching this, it goes very deep. So it's worth looking into and doing research on that. Philip Schneider is amazing, but it's very interesting as well how his parents as well. I found that really interesting about his connections. His dad was German as well, and there's obviously it was this position he was in. It wasn't like it was like he was given it. It was pushed into that position. So he must have been highly aware of certain things and certain aspects of the governments and the military. But yeah, I mean, so what would you say? Like, would you say that before the 1954? I mean, we can talk some more about Philip Schneider. There's a lot more to that story, and I'm sure we're going to come back to it in a minute. But was there no military bases before this Greada Treaty, or was that the turning point? I mean, we have been in contact with extraterrestrials before then, but obviously this was a certain race of beings that in 1954 at the Greada started the deep states as well, which is connected to all this as well, the covert America, if you like, and we can see now in today's age that America is somehow being controlled.
Well, you could technically, I mean, if you want, we can briefly discuss Otto Oscar Schneider, the father.
Go. So let's talk about Philip Schneider's dad. So just out of interest, first of all, though, when did Philip Schneider get appointed as a geologist for the US military? I mean, what was that kind of?
Well, it was the US Energy Department, or the US Department of Energy, or US Energy Department. I don't know the information on that. I know it was sometime in the 1970s. Some people say it was around 90, because he worked for 17 years for the US federal government in various capacities, whether that was 17 continuous years or whether that was on contracts that were renewable and there was maybe 3 to 6 month gaps between each contract. That's never been specified.
To get to that position, though, you have to be very well trusted. You know, the government.
He was very well trusted, but his legacy was because of also what his father had done, Otto.
Yeah, so let's talk
Schneider.
Let's talk about.
Okay, well, his father, you know, what do you know about? Yeah.
I don't know much.
Well,
you know, I know that you know, he discovered yeah, he was part of the Philadelphia experiment. Oh my God. Yeah. So of course he was. He was part of this. So
that's
this
right.
Wow. Right. Okay. So yeah, it's clicking. So there's a huge connection here, something with his bloodline or his
well, I mean,
genetics.
Yeah, I mean, Oscar Schneider, he'd fought on both sides during World War II from September 1939 through to May 1945. He was what was called an Unterseeboot-Kapitän, which is an underwater boat captain, if you like, or a submarine captain within what's called the Wehrmacht Kriegsmarine, or the Defence Force Warfare Navy. And therefore, he was part of, you know, the entire structure called the National Socialist Deutsche Beta Party, the NSDAP.
Right. Okay.
Wow. The National Socialist German Workers' Party, the NSGWP. Now,
I just because I don't know anything about, you know, I know very brief things about he was connected to Philadelphia, but does Otto have any stories about the Philadelphia experiment from his perspective? I've never looked into that.
Yeah. Well, I know that that many of the enlisted sailors and the commissioned officers in the US Navy that took part in the Philadelphia experiment that culminated, I think it was on the 28th of October 1943, with the USS Eldridge. Now, how much, again, the Philadelphia experiment is true and how much is disinformation is way open to question and need a lot more analysis.
Yeah.
But if we just take it at word that it was real and it happened, you've got to remember before that Otto Oskar Schneider, he had actually actively worked alongside Julius Robert Oppenheimer on the Manhattan Project to develop what was then the atomic bomb.
Wow.
So because he was involved in that research, and we know from things that Philip Schneider had said that in the Bikini Atoll nuclear test, which took place, I think it was the 1st of July 1946, and the Bikini Atoll is around the Marshall Islands in the Pacific Ocean. And fleets of UFO spacecraft were seen emerging from the atomic bomb when it exploded.
Wow.
So it was almost acting like a dimensional fissure that was opening literally a tear in linear space-time into like an alternate, you know, universe.
Wow.
So if you look at that and then look at the Philadelphia experiment, which, you know, was it teleportation or was it transporting the USS Eldridge into a completely separate dimensional space-time reality? So again, he had an active part in studying the various enlisted sailors and commissioned officers that had survived the Philadelphia experiment that took place or culminated, if you like, on the 28th of October 1943.
Yeah.
And he had been very, you know, closely involved in studying the effects on their physiology, how medically that if they recovered, most of them did not. They eventually passed away from various unusual medical conditions.
Pretty mental.
Yeah, it's
institutes as well.
Yeah, it really, the whole situation there. Yeah, so his father was very influential and entrusted with a huge amount of responsibility in the US Navy. And obviously, a lot of the secret occult technology that had come out of National Socialist Germany during World War II, how much of that was then covertly transported under, for example, Operation Paperclip back in the United States of America, or down into parts of South America, like the Bariloche region in Argentina. So we have a lot that's going on.
Did you think? It's amazing. It's an amazing story. I want to look into his father more now. That's just incredible. The connections between all that is phenomenal. It's incredible. But just with regards, like the deep bases we have over the planet, how many do you think there are on the planet in whole? I mean, you know, or is there particular locations or countries they're located in?
Well, the biggest concentrations are in the northern hemisphere. So Western Europe, there's known to be deep underground military bases under the Pyrenees, under the Swiss Alpine Mountains in Central Europe. There's deep underground military bases under the United Kingdom of Great Britain, the Irish Republic, and there's vast amounts of deep underground military bases under both the United States of America and Canada. There's a large number under many parts of Central America and South America, especially in places like Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Chile, and parts possibly southern Brazil as well. And a lot of these deep underground military bases were deliberately constructed so they interconnected with already pre-existing antediluvian tunnels. Now these could be classed as Lemurian tunnels and Atlantean tunnels from the Lemurian civilization, if you like, and the Atlantean civilization respectively, that were built as an emergency because of massive floods, you know, surface level, major global tectonic and geographic and topographical changes taking place. You've got to remember when the Lemurian continent, if you believe Lemuria existed, and I know from what I have researched that it did exist in the Pacific Ocean area, I mean, you can imagine the complete destruction, the coastal destruction with such vast land masses collapsing.
Yeah.
We see that effect on a smaller scale, you know, in parts of Southeast Asia where we've had major tidal events in, you know, Japan or South Korea or Taiwan or places like that. So that was, so I would say altogether, if you just say the number is around 450.
Wow. Okay.
But they're always being constantly upgraded. Almost every one of the deep underground military bases globally is interlinked. There is
so talk about just a little bit about that. That's done with the monorails, right? So that's what the monorail system, which is talked about a lot. Some people believe that's a conspiracy, but you know, the tools they use and the drilling machines are perfectly open. You can find these all over there. They're absolutely incredibly huge, actually. These vehicles that bore these tunnels.
Well, one example is in parts of like North Yorkshire and Lancashire in the United Kingdom, when we used to have the collieries, the mines.
Yeah.
You know, you're going back before you know, the collieries were all closed down. You know, when Arthur Scargill was the leader of you know, the National Union of Miners.
Makes you wonder whether or not their mines were closed for other reasons. You know, that's kind of, you know, we're told on the surface level. But
but people who are speleologists, that's cave explorers, who before they were sealed off these, you know, these openings, these cavernous openings, these mine shafts, would explore many parts of North Yorkshire where they existed in Lancashire, and would regularly hear the sound of what appeared to be this electrical sound of some kind of train deep underground, something moving at high speed.
Yeah.
So it's likely through the fissures and the deep, you know, the geological substrata.
And I just say, just on that note, Steve, I've got the exact book there. That's the book, isn't it?
Oh yeah, by Alan.
So that explains in that book about the guy that actually found the underground bases or the tunnels, and actually the tunnels were shaking, weren't they? But sorry.
That's right. But there's many other people that have had similar experiences to that as well. So we know that it's probably the same waves and such magnetic levitating trains, you know, shuttling through these tunnels. You know, I think it's around apparently Mach 2. So phenomenal speeds.
Wow.
And these tunnels are vacuum sealed, so there's no air resistance as they go through them, so they can go around the planet very quickly.
Where is this leading? So we have these deep underground bases. You know, these can't stay hidden forever. This civilization or these bases are evolving. You know, there has to be a tipping point for them to be revealed. When that happens, or I mean, do you think that will happen? Or, you know, when that does happen, do you think it would be a positive step for humanity?
I believe it will happen eventually, but it won't happen straight away. But I would say, perhaps in the next 5 to 10 years, a lot of the truth about the deep underground military bases will come to light. It's known that also, just on a side note, that some of those bases, not all of them, were, as I said, were constructed where they were interconnected with pre-existing antediluvian tunnels, which could have been Lemurian tunnels or perhaps Atlantean tunnels.
Yeah.
We're talking, thousands of years old, many thousands, aeons old. But many of these deep underground military bases were at the very, the base level. So it's level 8, say theoretically, would also have an access route into some areas within the hollow earth. Again, this is the whole hollow earth theory.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, hollow earth theory, it's a load of rubbish. It's just
no, I believe in that.
Yeah, I believe in it also. And it's probably in many ways a far greater secret than whether UFOs and aliens are real or not, I believe.
I think it's the ultimate. I've always felt that. I believe it's the ultimate key to a
Yeah.
lot of things. I think it would, and
Yeah.
and there's probably some sort of stargates within our Earth as well.
Yeah.
Of
Absolutely.
nature, jump gates. There's jump gates on the surface in places, but
Yeah. I mean, if you take a look at, I won't go into it now, but look at many of the Native American Indian myths and folklore concerning the hollow earth and how, they connect fully on a spiritual and a psychic level with their origins from within the hollow earth, where they believe there was this golden paradise and these shining cities. Presumably, some of them were classed as crystal cities or crystalline cities. And, the hollow earth has always represented that greater spiritual development than, human beings on the surface of planet Earth. And so some of these deep underground military bases connect into that aspect also. So it's
like the artificial self, it's the artificial within, isn't it? Like we have this natural kingdom of the hollow earth.
Yeah.
These artificial structures that are built within the earth. It's because that sort of goes on to the point of, which will be another video, but just talking about the different alien races, there isn't just one type. So how would they interact in these bases? How would other beings see this secrecy, good and bad beings,
Well, on the whole, the vast majority, whether it's the Nordic Pleiadians, whether it's the Aldebarans, whether it's, whatever, the Syrians or any other group, they unless they're renegades that are in some kind of sort of perverse alliance with the Rigelian Greys, that we can also call the Tall Greys, and therefore the Zeta Reticulan Type A Greys and the Zeta Reticulan Type B Greys that have all predominantly left this planet anyway. But shall we say, many decades ago, that there may have been a small renegade group. We know there were certain Nordic Pleiadians that was seen on a few occasions on board UFO spacecraft by abductees, alongside the Rigelian Greys and the shorter Greys, the Zeta Reticulan Type A Greys and the Zeta Reticulan Type B Greys. Now, these beings were classed as, again, 7'6" tall, incredibly bright blonde, platinum longish hair, very pale whitish complexions, very bright, almost glowing blue eyes, very muscular and very tall, but very emotionless, very cold, robotic looking, no empathy or compassion for the individuals that were taken on board. So there is that aspect, but it's very few. And in fact, the vast majority of extraterrestrials and ultra-terrestrials connected indirectly or directly with what we can call a galactic federation or a galactic council within this quadrant, shall we say, in this rather small galaxy we live in. They steer clear of planet Earth. They steer clear of the whole Sol 4 system. The whole solar system is like a no-go area, and most humans are classed, and the system that we have in place, the hierarchical structure, as being overly complex. Humans are too irascible, emotionally too volatile. Whether that's right or wrong, that's the perspective they have. So I'm not being judgmental myself about that.
No, I understand. From an outside perspective, if we look onto planet Earth and we see all these amazing high vibrational beings getting controlled by monetary systems and a park attendant, things like this. It's crazy.
But then you look at the the monetary system, and this is going back, this will be a subject perhaps for another talk, but the origins of the monetary system also fully interconnect to secret societies, and all of that is connected directly to the Rigel system in the Orion constellation. From the planet Greater, which orbits the blue supergiant star called Rigel, or Beta Orionis, which is obviously part of the Orion constellation.
Yeah, because this is where it leads back to. We come back to the Orion, and
it's the whole loop. Yeah, and
always
Orion
coming back to this Orion.
Yes, very powerful. The connection with Western occultism and Eastern occultism, and
this is something
very connected. The Orion constellation is very central to many aspects of the secret societies.
Yeah.
And the monetary system that was introduced, I won't go into the history, it was a units and credits system. It was basically an energy exchange system of enslavement.
Yeah.
Within the Rigel system, under what then became what was the Orion Confederation. But again, this is a huge subject.
It's huge. We'll go down other rabbit holes here, but look, let's stick with the deep underground military bases. So in present day, like coming up to now, where are we at with this? What is happening? I know there was sort of people believing sort of Trump's presidency was going to kind of destroy all the evil in these deep underground military bases and eradicate all this rubbish. But where are we at with this now? So what in these bases, these must be very well developed now, highly advanced, way beyond what we can perceive and how we can perceive technology. So what is happening in these places? What is going on now?
Well, they're ginormous city-sized structures. If you've got 8 levels, each level in itself is a small city. So if you've got over 450 of these deep underground military bases globally, and that's excluding any that are now being constructed on top and any refurbishment or modernization projects going on with current bases, we're looking at major city structures. I believe that there's many genetically engineered and hybridized life forms being stored in many of these deep underground military bases. I believe they're being used as vast seed banks for the different species of trees and plants, birds, mammals, insects, everything you can think of, fungi, mollusks, crustaceans.
What's that preservation there? What is that to, create Earth 2, or, create another Earth, create another, what do you see that as? What do you think that could be?
I think it's to do with the real climate change. Again, these are such vastly huge, concepts.
Right, okay, so we're going into the grand solar minimum, that kind of side of stuff, and the ice age and this kind of.
That's right. We're not.
Okay. So it's kind of, there is a sense. Okay, so there's a sense of preservation in the sense of understanding.
Because the whole farce of telling people that we had global warming when actually the sun has a natural global warming period, which is about 230 years.
That's right.
And then after that, it has what's called a global cooling cycle, which is 120 years. Yeah. And during that, you get what is called the grand, which is brought on, shall we say, on Earth because of the grand solar minimum. So the heliopause, the heliosphere, the magnetic field around the sun massively reduce in size. The sun, the diameter of our yellow dwarf star starts to shrink down, and the surface temperature of the sun rapidly cools down. It becomes very, very much cooler, significantly cooler.
Just saying in short, because I don't want to go down that whole pathway as much as it's amazing and interesting. But so, we hit the ice age, they've got somewhere to go. These bases are given them, somewhere to hide away and be safe. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So with regards to the UFO side of stuff with the deep, with these deep underground bases, so do you think most of the UFO sightings we're seeing around the world, and I know yourself and you've shown me UFOs as well before in the sky, do you think these are from these bases?
No, they're nothing to do. This is a talk for another time.
Yeah.
But no, they're actually part of the Galactic Federation, if you want to call it that, or a galactic council of sorts. And they're actually benevolent ultra-terrestrials. These are the beings that are flying the orange orbs of light, which is actually it's an electromagnetic field of light that disguises the shape and design of the UFO spacecraft inside it. And then you have, usually alongside it, you'll see an oval shaped, brilliant, blazing white light, which is one of the navigators on board. And those ultra-terrestrials are steering and organizing the much smaller UFO spacecraft disguised in the orange sheath of light, if you like. And those beings on board the smaller UFO spacecraft are actually the juniors. They're like the children of the adult ultra-terrestrials in the actual oval shaped UFO craft. And they are not allowed to interfere directly with humans. They're not allowed to have any, unless they're on a spiritual and a psychic level.
The ecosystems and working with the planet in that way. You know, is there like some good from that? Is there something, you know, giving some people hope for this? Because I think when we start looking at these, and we'll come on to the Star Wars program, but I just want to see your view on that.
Well, I think it's not about whether there's hope or no hope. The fact that the alien abductions have largely gone on the planets is a fantastic sign. Because they've been prevented. It hasn't totally been removed, but it has largely gone. That's a very positive thing. This is now, again, you know, it's the humans on this planet need to become more aware by making more of a psychological effort to you know, use critical and individual thinking as to what is going on around them, and to question everything. And it's not a case of it's all doom and gloom. No, not at all. I don't see it that way. I just think people need to get to a point where they think differently. Stop relying on the mainstream media to feed you massive amounts of disinformation, which is all fear-based. So you know, if there's any sense of hopelessness and, you know, everything being pointless, that futility is coming from the way this so-called, shall we say, 3D holographic reality is being shaped.
Yes,
you know, by the media. So,
and it's all down to our choices. But look, you know,
and it is a soul personality level decision. You know, every human being who has a soul personality who incarnates on planet Earth, it really depends. Alien abduction only actually has taken place because on a, shall we say, on a soul personality level, prior to even being born on this planet, soul personality chose to have that kind of negatively based interaction with the Rigelian greys, and therefore the Zeta Reticulan type A greys, and the Zeta Reticulan type B greys. But that doesn't mean, you know, 98% of other human beings have that experience. They do not. They have thousands of other experiences, many of which are beautiful and positive.
It is such a mixed bag, and that's what's so interesting about all this. And I think, you know, we need to question that, question this all the time, these things that are happening. And you know, I think just briefly, but we will talk about this on another talk altogether because it's a huge subject. But the Star Wars program, now this is definitely connected to the deep state and all this deep underground military bases. So do you want to say a few things about the Star Wars program?
Yeah, I mean, it was
because that's just so people know that is connected. Philip Schneider, this is all interlinked to Orion. This is kind of linked to the two places.
Okay, so well, its official name is the Strategic Defense Initiative, the SDI, then also known as the Star Wars program. And it was a combination of using ground-based units and orbital deployment platforms as a deflector mechanism for the near space area around planet Earth and the Moon, against what would be, you know, shall we say, attacks in near space coming from ICBMs, you know, during the Cold War with the Soviet Union and therefore Russian Federation. But that was, you know, from what I think Philip Schneider said, that was really just a diversion. And when US President Ronald Wilson Reagan announced the whole development or the founding of the Strategic Defense Initiative on the 23rd of March 1983, what the actual version of why it had been created for the consumption of the American citizens and, you know, human beings around planet Earth was, you know, not what they told them it was there for. It was more a defensive based mechanism to try and deflect any actual attacks within the solar system from any negatively based or malevolent extraterrestrials. I think this was because of the mess that the entire Creator Treaty that had been signed on the 20th of February 1954 by US President David Dwight Eisenhower had created the huge amount of logistical problems with the abductions that had already, they didn't want a repeat of that taking place with another negatively based or perhaps even more powerful based, you know, extraterrestrial group coming into the solar system. So, or it could have been perhaps also the Rigelian Greys had infiltrated some parts of the US federal government, and was steering that strategic defense initiative back of the Star Wars program to try and deflect any positively based benevolent extraterrestrials coming into the solar system to try and, you know, save planet Earth from what had been going on. So again, that would need more verification and more research to kind of get some kind of clarity as to what that was really about. But it wasn't really anything to do with the Soviet Union and the Russian Federation, all that.
No, we kind of know, you know, after you start you know, you looked into this for quite a few years, you start realizing that the situations happening around the planet, wars and all that are just divert tactics always, and there's always something bigger or something else going on. What you just on Trump when he introduced, you know, he was officially introduced his Space Force, which I found very interesting.
That's right.
I know there's always been off-terrestrial agents. Gary McKinnon explained in his interview in Project Camelot all them years ago, but there certainly is off-planet agents. But I think we're at this point now where we are crossing over, where we are going to start to see these existence of beings appear. Wouldn't you agree?
The appearance of these beings, you're talking about certain extraterrestrials appearing.
Yeah, there's going to be some disclosure, I think.
Yes,
very soon.
yeah,
I believe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we know that US President Donald John Trump had signed an executive order. It was in 2020 about creating a complete and full disclosure of the extraterrestrial presence on planet Earth. And there is rumours, and again, it's only rumours, and it may not actually take place at all, that it's some date between the 1st of June to the 30th of June 2021. There's going to be an announcement made by, I don't know whether it's the US Defense Department, it could be some other group or within the US federal government, that yes, officially we have an extraterrestrial presence either on planet Earth or we had in the past had an extraterrestrial presence. How it will be worded, the dates, I don't know, it may not even be in June, but that is the rumor. And that would be a massive change because scientifically it's going to change everything. Yeah. The whole complete lie and farce of Darwinian evolution on a microbiological level alone is just going to be completely dismantled. So, you know, so-called established academia is going to have major psychological fallout over this issue because everything they built their careers on, the vast amounts of billions of pounds sterling of investment, you know, we're talking 50, 60, 70 odd years, all this research and, you know, all this transspeciation, all this, it's all just lies. Yeah. There's no, you know, basically what it will show is in the long term, yes, whatever human beings are, whatever we define as a human or collectively human beings, the DNA and the genetics within the human physiology that make up who we are has come from various extraterrestrials and quite possibly ultra-terrestrials in other parts of this galaxy, perhaps in other galaxies, and may have also come from a parallel dimension, parallel reality, and even maybe a parallel universe of some nature. Yeah. So no, we didn't. The idea of the primordial slime and a bolt of lightning hitting it, suddenly creating a kind of an organic chemical, and out of that comes the DNA double helix. It's just a farcical joke.
Yeah, no, completely. It makes a mockery of what we are.
It does, and it's done deliberately. That's been deliberately done to almost invert and limit human consciousness.
Well, Steve, it was amazing, and we're going to do more of these talks, and we're going to lead out some information from this talk and talk about it next week or in the following weeks. But is there anything you'd like to end on regarding deep underground bases, and maybe some words? I think maybe at this time we're in, let's give some words of hope and positivity, and see that in the sense of lifting people's spirits. What if you'd like to say anything on that?
Yeah, I think don't lose faith. There isn't anything to worry about. The darkest of what was going on is over, but the road back to, shall we say, divine salvation is quite a long one for human beings. This is a spiritually quite a primitive planet. Human beings are in quite a low state of spiritual evolution and development, but the fact that human beings are still on this planet, have been on this planet for thousands of years, literally aeons upon aeons of time, is testament to the brilliance of the concept of being a human being, and then ultimately human consciousness. So, the light always shines through the darkness in the end, the cleansing light. So that's the way I would perceive it. We're not going to be able to jump forward and just go, yeah, it's all going to change tomorrow. This system that we've got has existed again for thousands of years. It goes back before ancient Sumeria and the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East. Again, interconnects back again to the Rigel system in the Orion constellation. Again, it's somewhere else, in this galaxy. Yes. So again, here we go again with the whole extraterrestrial aspect.
I think it's just number one. I think the disclosure side, for us, especially where we're at in the world with all this pandemic and all this, that we need that lift, consciousness lift. And I think knowing that there is some extraterrestrial life out there is vital. But I just echo exactly what you say. I think it's perfectly exactly right. And I think we've got to know our power and discover who we are. And sometimes these are challenging situations that are around us and quite daunting and scary. But we got to remember that we are very powerful. And if we were not that, we wouldn't be here. We survive so much, and you're so true on that. If people only knew what our bodies go through on a daily basis, the illness that passes through our body and how powerful our immune systems are. But I echo that, Steve. But let's end up there and say until next week. It's bye from me, Zach, and
it's bye from me, Stephen Denman.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.